Welcome everybody to Conscious Cafe Global. My name is Gina Lazenby. I'm your host this evening, and we have a fantastic session on something which is really a kind of a basic human skill that many of us actually do lack. It is listening. And tonight we're going to be looking at the art of listening, deepening connection through meaningful conversation. And I know that many people feel that we connect and converse with each other, but it's great to have skills to take that deeper and have something that's a bit more meaningful. And that's exactly what Colin Smith's going to do with us this evening. After a long career in business, Colin has developed this identity through his passion for listening. For the last 20 years, he's been teaching people, coaching, mentoring, and become a specialist in deep listening. And it really is, as I say, one of the most basic of human skills. However, there are tips and tricks and techniques for really becoming a great listener. And that's what Colin's going to do with us tonight. So, Colin, we're going to welcome you and invite you in. And if we were all in the same room, we would be doing the hands applause, but we'll wave hands and say, welcome, Colin.
Lovely. Thank you, Gina, for that introduction. And thank you, Judy, for the opportunity to be here again. It's a long time since I've sat with people in Conscious Cafe, a good many years, probably at least 10 or even more. So delighted to be here. A couple of things really. One is about confidentiality. Be mindful about what you decide to share, either on the screen or with each other. So that's your choice. The other is, people ask me, how do I set up to actually listen? And it's lovely that Gina took us through that meditation. So I will use a little bit of the meditation that I use for myself, so that you're aware of what I'm actually doing. Before I do that, Gina, can you? At the moment, I'm seeing me on my screen, and I find that personally off-putting. So
Okay, so I think since you're spotlit for everybody, you do have the choice to view gallery, in which case you can see everybody. So should
okay, let me
be
just
on
view
the right.
gallery. That's
Yeah.
better. So I don't feel so doesn't feel so onerous with me on the screen talking to myself. So thank you. So the meditation that I use, and of course I use the breath, which is a very important factor when it comes to listening. But I imagine, so just come with me on this. So imagine that you can close your eyes with this, but imagine that you're walking into this space. It's pure white, it's cloudy, it feels like a room, but there's no edges to it. And as I look down at the floor, it's white and shiny, but it's slightly curved. But what I notice in front of me is all these different coloured boxes of different shapes, sizes, textures and colours. And I realise it's my stuff. And as I continue to focus on my breath, because of the curvature, I notice that my stuff starts to move gently to the side. If I look down either side, it's still there. But what I notice then is I can see all of your stuff also gradually moving. And so I'm getting myself into a space where I can see you and hear you, but also so that you can see and hear me. So I can do that within about a minute, and it's just a nice, I suppose, colourful exercise that we can do. So the key for me with listening is about settling and stilling myself first and foremost. And the second is to notice. What is it that I'm noticing? What is it I'm noticing about myself? What feelings am I experiencing as I'm in that space? What am I noticing about the person? What am I noticing about the environment that they're in? And I often use the analogy of a pair of hands. So this is how I'd like to arrive, which is still and settled and calm. All too often we see this going on, people talking and not listening. And so if I start with this, I can have this experience of someone arriving, and little by little, they slow, they settle, and they arrive. And then we can connect. And noticing, I remember with the taking noticing as really an important aspect. I often go to the gym and to the coffee shop, but I don't take my mobile. So it enables me to notice other things. And one particular time I was walking, and coming towards me was a father, and he was deliberately walking slow with a pushchair or pram. And I suspect that the baby was asleep, may have been awake all night, but Dad was taking the baby for a walk. As soon as he'd gone, literally coming the same way, was another man, probably in his 50s, maybe 60s, and he was pushing his mum in a wheelchair. And then as I crossed over the bridge, there was a young mum pushing a pushchair, but she was jogging with the pushchair. She had a dog on a leash, and she had a child ahead on his bike. And when you look at that, it's a joy to see all these things happening at the same time. And so the more we notice, the more I think we actually appreciate. So for me, breath, looking after my breath and noticing helps keep me returning, because I'm sure most of you will have experienced, you're doing your best to listen, and what you notice is that your attention has gone. So somebody might say to you something like, oh, I was at the cinema the weekend and I saw this film, and you go, oh, I saw that film as well. And so you're off. Another time, and so it's fine to notice these things, but the key is to bring yourself back. And so I often think about the breath, or looking at the person, looking at what's around them to help me return to that. And if you were to put me on speaker view, I'm guessing that all of you can see me in the whole screen. What are you noticing? Imagine that we just met for the first time, and you see all these things around me and me. What are you noticing? What are you seeing? What are you thinking? What are you wondering about? Is there something, if you wanted to, you could ask me about? So we could put this in the chat, which I'm very happy for you to do, or just raise your hand and tell me what you think or what you see. And I'm very, what's the word? Hard-skinned. So tell me what you're seeing.
Looking to the hand up, if anybody wants to share. Make a comment, Colin.
Or pop something in the chat. Steve. Steve.
Hello there. Yeah,
Hi.
hello. What I've noticed is with all your books and everything, so straight away I think, oh, quite a learned gentleman. But I also see little sort of like fun type, like a moon with different colours and and that seems like you've got a sense of humour. You like fun in
Yep.
your life. So that's what I think is a nice balance with the books, and then these little items. So I just thought that's a nice, because we need more fun in our lives. So yeah. Anyway,
Beautiful.
that's an
Lovely.
observation.
Thank you. It's
Welcome.
and so there's potentially a story about the different items around. There's stories about the books and all of those things. And so immediately you've noticed something. I appreciate that. I'm able to respond to it. And therefore we start having a conversation.
That's
And,
it.
and it's straightforward. So thank you. Anyone else?
Colin, is Mercedes is saying about the baby photos has caught her attention, and the wedding photos.
Yes.
Yes, Maggie's also said about family photographs.
Yes. So, so any of those, so the two on my, this side, this is with my daughter. That's my grandson. It's my daughter Katie's son. And then there's a picture above me. To my right side, that's me when I was very little with a bike. Believe it or not, it was a bike that I could ride, but it didn't have any brakes. Can you believe it? So I had to stop it by running into things. And so each of these things gives us a chance to ask something about the other person. It's not invasive. I've got it there. So why wouldn't I be happy to talk about it? And so I've also been asked about the card. So the card on this side is actually, it says, what do you want to think about? And so it's to do with the Time to Think course that I was on. So it's just noticing all those different things. So thank you for that. One person I remember talking to, straight away I saw him, and he'd got a looked like a telescope in his in the picture. So I asked him about the telescope. Is it a telescope? Is it a camera? What does he see? And then we had this lovely conversation about astronomy and things like that. So I've just seen that somebody's put, is it Judy put something in the chat?
Orange item next to the little statue. Orange item next to the little statue. Let's have a look.
Orange. Oh, sorry. Curious about the orange.
Oh yeah, we've got a Buddha.
Yes.
Over your right shoulder is on here, unless it's reversed on Zoom, and there's it's like a sun face or a lion face. It's red and orange.
Yeah. So the sun, that is the sun that goes with the cloud, goes with the moon. They're all connected, and I think, as Steve said, they're all a little bit of fun to bring out, really. So yeah. Any other points in there, Gina, that you picked out?
Yeah, to move about the measure. No, got that. Yeah,
Got it. Lovely pictures. Yeah, got it. Lovely. Thank you. Okay, so what we're going to talk about, it's how would I describe it? In any conversation, it depends. I'm sorry, I've come back to
gallery view.
Gallery view again. That's better. Thank you. Yes, so it depends. And so part of the idea of noticing, part of the idea of being still and present is we can adjust ourselves according to the person or the group that we're working with. And overall, for me, there's a big irony sitting here talking about listening. So welcome to the art of listening, deepening connections through meaningful conversations. And it got me thinking there's a big difference between conversations, which we have all the time, and I think they're really necessary, and they're what keeps things going. And so I go to a coffee shop and we get that usual, so, hi, how are you? Yeah, I'm fine, thanks, and all of that. And occasionally they say something different. And so we can step into what might be meaningful conversations. And I had one recently where the barista I know, Malachi, he said he's a dancer and he'd been to an audition. And even though they said they were going to be there for the whole day, he was told after about 20 minutes that he was no longer needed for the day. And so he was really upset. So he was able to share a little bit of that story with me and asked him what he was going to do and shared it. That felt more sort of meaningful. And then if we go to deep and meaningful, and so another guy in the coffee shop, Jay, he said to me, yeah, I'm fine, thanks. Then he stopped and he said, I'm really struggling at the moment. I said, really? He said, yeah, I'm anxious. And suddenly we went into another space, another deeper conversation about anxiety and how he was feeling. And at the end of it, he said something really lovely, which was, thank you for listening. And part of the idea of listening is that it's about them, not me. And so often in those situations, they think, oh yes, I know what you mean. I'm always anxious. And suddenly it becomes about me again rather than about them. So the more I can be empty of my stuff and my thoughts and things, enables me to connect more deeply, more meaningfully with the other person. And those three things reminds me of a friend of mine called Orit, who's a pianist, and she also talks or teaches leadership skills. And she says, I'm going to play 3 pieces of music, and I'd like you to tell me which one you like best. So she plays the three pieces of music, and most people, probably about 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10 sometimes, they pick the third piece. A couple of people will pick the second one, and the odd occasion they might pick the first. Interestingly, the first is note perfect. The second is note, it's the same piece of music, but she's added a little bit more to it. And the third is where she's let herself play the music. It's almost as though she is playing and the music is playing her. And that's why they like it. And so when we get into that different types of conversation, I feel there's something a bit like that. And so I have a question, which do you prefer? Do you prefer those sort of top level conversations, meaningful conversations where it goes deeper, or deeper meaningful conversations? And just put in the chat, which one you prefer, or which one. So first of all, which one do you prefer? Conversations, meaningful conversations, or deeper meaningful conversations? Just pop it in the chat. What's your preference? What do you prefer?
People go for depth, don't they?
Right, deep meaningful conversations, deep and meaningful. Yeah, agree with this. And so, which are the ones that are missing in your life? Same thing, put it in the chat. What ones are missing?
Yeah, meaningful.
Meaningful conversation. Yep, agreed, Maggie. Deep, meaningful, geez. Never thought. Yep. Thank you, Mercedes. Have a live conversations, all sorts. Yeah. Same wavelength, yes. A bit of all. Yeah. Meaningful with work colleagues, that's lovely. It's nice that you've got a safe environment, Bernie, that you can do that in the workplace. What do you do, Bernie, as a matter of interest? You able to speak?
Yep, I do learning and development.
Okay. And it feels like a safe place that you can have meaningful conversations.
Well, I think what the question you asked wasn't which one is missing, I thought.
My apologies. Oh, sorry. So thank you. Sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
You're missing those meaningful conversations. Yeah. Is it because it's not safe?
I think it's because I don't always bring my authentic self to work, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So here is an example where I've started a conversation with Bernie. I could go further with what's stopping you bringing your authentic self, and we can then carry on that conversation. But I won't do it now. People who are not awake, deep, not absent. Yeah. So on the one hand, we want all this, on the other hand, we're not getting it, which I think is kind of interesting. And I was fortunate enough to be able to go to New Zealand about 2 years ago, and for differing reasons, backtrack, sorry. Most of the conversations I have are either meaningful or deeper meaningful. That's just the nature of the work I do. And when I was in New Zealand for 5 weeks, I really, really, really missed those conversations. And I felt bereft of it until I got back home. And there was only one moment where I started to get into one with someone, and then she got interrupted and it went away. So I really value those. And so when I'm introduced, I say I'm Colin, but I'm also known as the listener. And I usually get 2 replies. The first is what, which is always the funny one. And the other one is quizzical, the listener. And so I asked my favorite question, and it's a question I'm going to ask you. You can pop it in the chat. By the way, anyone who wants to just share it out loud, put your hand up and we'll go there. The group's small enough to do that. And so my question is, when was the last time you felt really heard? And so if you put in there who it was with and when, you don't need to put the details of what was covered, just when it was and who it was with. And it doesn't need to be named, just a friend or whatever will be fine. So just pop it in the chat.
You reading this, Colin?
I'm just looking at it now.
Yeah.
Work colleague today, friends of
Long-time friend.
46 years, lovely.
It's a long-time friend, isn't it? It's a good
Yeah.
friend.
Daily basis I listen to, yep. A therapist. Yeah, they're good listeners. It's your way of life, Diane, sorry. Yeah, what do you do?
Listen to people.
So, okay,
Have an open door, actually, would be the answer to that.
right.
Yeah.
And is this the as part of an organisation or what?
Not really. Not really. It's just a way of life. I've been like it for a long time. I'm kind of a nutcase.
I think you're a true friend.
But I was going to say, a friendly person.
Yes. And so these are like friends and the like that
Friends and neighbours, anybody who passes, the workers.
Yeah. And
Anybody.
because
I used to think, excuse me.
No, not at all.
When I was 15 or 16, I wanted to save the world.
Okay.
Or be Prime Minister. And then I thought, Jesus never made it. Gandhi never made it. Buddha, I don't know. I didn't know about Buddha then, but I had a vague idea.
Yeah.
And then I thought, but all of them, you can't do the whole world. So you have to do one person at a time. So I started when I was about 15 or 16.
How lovely. And
Anybody who crosses my path.
And the reality is that we never know the difference that we make to their lives. You know, there was one lady, it was a checkout girl, only about 16, 17. And it was that lovely, how are you? I'm fine. How are you? I'm fine. And then she looked at me and she said, I'm not really. And I said, oh. And then she just poured out how she'd lost the boyfriend, had packed her in. He was being nasty. Police were involved, etc., etc. And she just looked at me and said, thank you, and carried on. Now, like you, we don't know the difference it actually makes. But it's lovely that you are doing something similar and making a difference in this world. One person at a time.
One person at a time. And to be honest, this week especially, for example, I expect magic. I expect that people to leave my house thinking, I feel so much better. Oh, it's been a magic conversation and all that sort of stuff. There's loads of it.
Beautiful. Lovely. Thank you. Really appreciate that, Diane. And I appreciate you not being here, but also doing that listening work. We need more listeners in this world, that's for sure. So thank you. Let me go back to that gallery view. So going back to that sort of question. So when you feel heard, how does that feel? Do you have use metaphors if you wish? Again, put it in the chat, and if somebody wants to share what it feels like. One of the loveliest ones was, it feels like a warm blanket wrapped around me. At the same time, I've got a mug of hot cocoa or chocolate. It's empowering. I'm going to just check whether these are coming in. It's empowering. What else? What does it feel like? Wonderful, thanks. Yeah.
Colin, there's a difference, isn't there, to feeling heard and somebody listening to you versus someone listening to you and then coming up with suggestions, in a sense, fixing. Rather than they've been listening, but while they were listening, they were coming up with all sorts of ideas that they then, so the space is lost. But it is a gift, isn't it, to have a space just to be heard and feel heard without necessarily having anything come back in the way of advice.
Very much so. In Charles Hewig's book called Super Communicators, he said, I think people want three things. They want to be hugged, they want to be helped, and they want to be heard. It'll be one of those three. And sometimes just ask. And so often Molly, my wife, will come in and she's agitated about something, and I'll ask her, what do you want? And sometimes it's a hug. Most times after that, it's to be heard. And so she just lets it out. And I think that's really important. We need that. And you're right, Gina. Most people listen to reply. not listen to understand. And I think there's a really big difference in that. So following on from that, having had this conversation, I've asked the question, they're now interested. They'll say something like, but aren't we all good at listening? And I say, no, most people, unless they're audibly impaired, are very good at hearing. But only a small percentage of people know and actually do listen. And then the question is, well, isn't listening and hearing the same thing? And it's not. So, and I believe in this group particularly, I think you know the answer. What's the difference between hearing and listening? And anyone put their hand up and tell me.
Who wants to jump in?
Steve.
Can you jump in? Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you, Steve.
Hearing is saying, I hear what you say, but they're not really listening because they're normally distracted or multitasking and doing other things. Like I can have conversations, sometimes a meaningful conversation with people, and they're in their two-dimensional world, looking at screens,
Yeah.
and they're not always listening. So
Yeah.
I just pause and say, okay, I'll wait until I have to be patient because they're not present. So anyway,
We feel it, don't we?
yeah, that's it.
You know, yes, I'm listening. So imagine that, any of us go on stage, we're presenting, and we've got this in our hand. And you don't mind, do you? I might get a call. Or even if it rings, you say, you don't mind. It's just a crazy world we live in. So, yeah, thank you for that, Steve. Who's next? Moira.
Moira wants to share.
Thank you, Moira.
Yes, I remember hearing someone say that listening is when you're deliberately try to empty your own mind of your own agenda and then open your ears. And it's quite hard work, I find.
Yeah.
It's not, it's not just simple. You have to make an effort.
Yeah, they say you have to intend to listen, which is very different to just hearing. So you and I, Moira, could be in a restaurant, engaged in conversation. It's noisy, and someone shouts, Moira. You'll hear it. You'll turn around and you go, did somebody call my name out? I wouldn't have heard it. I mean, if they say Colin, I'll hear it, but you'll hear it. So hearing is about keeping us safe. Is there anyone's got their hand up? Thank you, Moira. Gina, has anyone else got their hand up?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, no worries. So,
Colin, could I actually say something? Sorry, I can't get my camera to work.
Of course you can.
My name's Christine. When you're saying about people listening to you, I've been through a huge amount of surgery in the last couple of years, including having a heart transplant.
Wow.
And basically what I found was at times it was very difficult to get the doctors or the consultants to actually hear me. And I actually, when I met some of them or somebody that actually did listen to me, I just had to say, thank you for listening to me, because they are always looking at you as a patient, but in actual fact, rather than too much of a person. And I just found that was something that actually then I learned as well from all that experience, that I now listen much more to people and don't jump in. I used to be a terrible jumper inner. So, yeah.
Why do you think it is that they don't listen and they're just hearing?
Because they maybe think that they're right. They know everything. I don't know everything about what they've done or how they've treated me or whatever. But I mean, I'm still in battles with regard to the amount of medication I'm on. So
yeah, but who knows?
Yeah, but that, it's just a different set of people, not a friend, but somebody that hears you. Then you feel safer with them.
100%. The trust gets built if
Yeah,
they if
absolutely
if you
trust.
if you feel you've been heard. The
Yeah.
I was going to mention this a
Thank
little bit
you.
later. I'm aware that you're going to speak, Diane. Won't be a second. That they did research with doctors, and what they found is that 3 out of 4 doctors, when they're presented with a new condition, not necessarily a new patient, they 3 out of 4 doctors presented with a new patient or new condition will interrupt the patient within 18 seconds on average. The shortest was 11 seconds, and I think the longest was about 25. And that's right, it's within 18 seconds. So I often ask that question, are you an 18-second father, 18-second mother? Because they're already giving you the answer, and you haven't even finished speaking yet. And again, many of you may well have had this experience of getting to the door with the prescription in hand. You say, there's just one other thing, doctor. I forgot, I didn't mention this. And the doctor looks at you and goes, come here, tears the prescription up, tell me again, and then you do it. And because if you don't do that, you walk away and you go, I'm not sure I believe in this medication. There's no trust. And so I think and what they said was that most people can actually summarize what they need to tell the doctor within 35 seconds. And so if they just wait a little bit longer, the chances are they would have got more information, because the person who knows my body best of all is me. And often if we check in how we're feeling, we can give the doctor some really good answers. So yeah, great point there. Thank you. Diane, what were you going to add about, we're talking about hearing and listening, weren't we?
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned a 18-second father and 18-second mother, because what I was actually thinking when you said that, I was going to say something completely different, but was that actually that's where I learned a lot of patience, by having lots of children or having the occasion to listen to
Right.
lots of different children. Because if you listen to a child, you have to wait for a minute until the child has finished speaking. And if you don't wait, then you don't give the child a chance to be a person. So you really learn a lot about that. But therefore, what I was actually going to say,
Yep.
what I have learned, therefore, is that when you are listening to people, the difference between hearing and listening, or listening and hearing, is when you're actually hearing people, you kind of feel them as well. It's not just a hearing, it's a feeling.
Yes. Do you want to do
And they
this
feel
job?
felt. Sorry.
No, you're absolutely right. So hearing is passive, listening is active. You have to intend to listen.
Yeah.
And when you listen, you're listening with all of yourself, right? So, and there's a Chinese symbol for listening, which has ears, eyes, and heart, right? So the whole of you is listening to the whole of you is listening to the whole of them, which is why noticing is really important. And as I think Anne has just popped in there, I think if I read it correctly, noticing the body language. Yeah, we can tell. I'm going to mention that I could have mentioned this a little bit later. I'll bring it in now. When we're thinking, we move from back to gallery. So when we're in we're thinking. So when I'm thinking, I look away to think. I go away to think. We can watch people's thinking going in waves and pauses. So I've thought, I've come back, but I haven't finished thinking yet. And so we get a chance to, as a listener, to just wait a little longer. It might be 3 seconds, it might be longer, but just watch them thinking. And sometimes in that pause, yes, there is that opportunity. People pause, in the pause, they want to fill the space, they want to fill the silence. But actually, a lot of people are still thinking, and they come up with a second wave of thinking, and then they pause. And where it gets even more interesting is if you say to them, and what more? And what more would you like to think or feel or want to say? 99 times out of 100, big smile. Nobody does that. And they carry on speaking because you've heard They feel heard and validated and that their words matter. And it's really important. And as Diane rightly says, when people go away, they feel like some magic's happened. I've got a friend of mine, June, he said listening is a superpower. Right? And his life has changed as he's learned about listening. And he feels more comfortable going into conversations with anyone because of it. So a memory jogger, I think I've done that, yes, is you hear from, you listen to. You hear from, you listen to. So that's a nice way of remembering it. So bring a person to mind with whom you could never have a deep and meaningful conversation. Never have. And the question is why? Again, you can pop this in the chat. And what are the characteristics of that person? So someone you could never have a deep and meaningful conversation with. What's getting in the way? And again, if anyone wants to speak, we've got a small enough group, we can do it.
Hand up if you want to comment. Steve's got his hand up again.
Yeah, thank you, Mercedes. Again, wise words from a lady. Understands a lot about doctors. Thank you. He likes to talk. I'll pick up that in a second. Steve, yeah, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I feel that I think it's usually because of people don't have time.
Okay.
And they don't, and that sometimes they're shallow conversate, or they just haven't got time to try and to really go. They've got to go. They're always on the move. So, and obviously, I'm an elderly gentleman now, so I've got time.
Yes.
But I'm just aware of the pace, as you said, observing people and things, and I just sometimes think, quality, just that bit more allowed to pause, be in a good space,
Yeah.
and allowing time. But a lot of people, yeah, I hear what you say, but I've got to go, or
Yeah.
or they have a filter, or something's going on anyway. But it's people. So there we are.
Yeah. I think it's a really good point you make about the time. My thinking is that the world's going one direction, which is faster, less kind, shorter levels of attention. The work I'm trying to do is going the other way. And also people like Diane, we're here to, back on gallery again, we're here to make a difference. We all want these more deeper, meaningful conversations, and yet we're behaving as though we don't want them. And how can we build time for ourselves? Gina was saying earlier that she's been away to look after herself, to give herself some space to settle again. If not, I think we're all going to struggle more and more. At another level, I think that these skills are the skills that we're going to need in the future. I think this is getting a bit slightly out of this context. The world is changing in such a way. I think we're going to need the old-fashioned skills we talked about, like listening, things like community that we've lost. We're valuing the things that don't matter. We don't value the things that do. We seem to do it during COVID, but as soon as that's finished, next, move on. So it's a bit tough. So we're talking about.
Sarah had her hand up.
Sorry,
Sarah.
where are you? Thank you, Judy. Gina, it's Sarah.
Where are you, Sarah?
Where are you, Sarah?
Yeah, I did have my hand up, and then I thought you'd moved on, so I put it down. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, bless you.
You can hear me?
Yes, I can, Sarah. Thank you.
Well, it was about when you said, someone you can't, you don't feel listened to, or you can't. I have a friend I've known for many years, and we're very fond of each other, but she doesn't like talking about feelings.
Okay.
She avoids or laughs them off, and trivializes them. So that keeps the conversation on a certain level, on a superficial level.
Yeah, and we respect that.
Yes.
Yeah, much
Yes.
as we might want to have those conversations with her, she doesn't,
Yeah.
and that's okay. But you know that because of that, it's going to stay at one level,
Yes, exactly.
and
Exactly.
and they're friends with us for different reasons, and of course that's okay.
Yeah.
But there's those moments when we're able to. There was one lady I remember we started talking, and she was a solicitor, I think, and I noticed that she was starting to get teary, and she sort of like sniffed, and I've just got to go to the bathroom, and I knew she was about to burst, but it wasn't to be. Maybe the place wasn't right. She wasn't comfortable with me or something, but the environment, she was ready to burst. And I think that, excuse me, if we handle that well when they do burst, then they're so grateful for us just being there for them. So it's really lovely. So yeah, thank you for that. Gina, was there anything else in what people had said in the chat? Because I've not been able to read through it all.
Well, Dan was making a comment about, things being different during the pandemic, and then maybe we've lost some of those skills. And we learned to do that more then.
Yeah,
It was slower. It was an unusual time, wasn't it?
agreed. Okay, so let's just go to the next part of that, which is who. Bring to mind the person with whom you could have this deep and meaningful conversation. And so why is it, and what are they talking about and thinking about and sharing? What's the opposite of that? Again, happy to, if anyone wants to share it personally rather than put it in the chat.
Are you looking for the examples of people where they have a particularly good connection?
Yeah, particularly good connection where I guess in some respects they can have a conversation about anything. They can show up one day and have a conversation, show up another, have a meaningful one, another day deep and meaningful. It really doesn't matter what the subject is, they can have that conversation.
Mm-hmm. Somebody's Anne's saying here an elderly friend, someone else saying their mother. They're obviously an older generation. Not that we say that older people can listen and younger people can't, but that's two people there. Who obviously from an older generation.
Yeah. How do I chat? Anne. Yeah, hi. Tell me more.
Speak, is that what you're saying, Anne?
Sorry, you're on mute. Sorry, Anne.
Looking for Anne.
Yeah, I can see her with glasses. Hi, Anne.
Hi, sorry.
That's all right.
I work out how to put the hand up. I'm not.
Oh, sorry. How do I chat?
Yeah.
I was thinking, this is going to be a meaningful conversation. We've got some work to do.
Silent. With my elderly friends, I always had a deep connection with her, and I think that always allowed for trust and feeling that it was all right to talk.
Yeah.
There was that level where I didn't have it with my parents, and it was a case of you were seen and not heard.
Yeah.
It has a huge impact on how you then learn to converse and socialize with other people. But with Jeannie, she was just incredible. She always provided me with the next author that I needed on my spiritual journey. She was incredible. But you could have some very deep and meaningful conversations, and I learned that art of, like, you stop, you give that person a chance to talk, but you're making good eye contact. It's the whole thing of that verbal conversation is only 7%. I work with people that have got cognitive impairments.
Yes.
So you learn to pick up on those subtle things as well. And I think also more of us now, I don't know about you, but I connect here through my third eye.
Okay. Yes.
And you just know intuitively now whether you can talk, you can feel trust. I find the whole thing is just moving forward so fast now.
Yeah.
And I think it's lovely because we're in a completely different world. This is the way I feel.
Yeah.
And you make that eye contact, you have that. And I've had to learn the hard way about, like somebody else was saying, about that you have to sort of learn when not to speak and not jump in. Because that for me is a learnt behaviour to try and get attention from my my parents. So I've had to unpick all that. But it's
Yeah.
been a hell of a good lesson and teaching, if you want to look at it from that point of view. But I love where I am now.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. You pick up a number of good points there about how you connect. I appreciate what you said about the third eye. I noticed that I move from my head to my heart, and it's a heart-to-heart connection.
Oh, there's that aspect.
But,
it works with the third eye.
Yeah.
You're coming from the heart all the time.
Yeah. And what I notice is that when I'm in that space, it genuinely feels like this bubble between the two of us. Even online, I can feel that connection. And I don't have to think about what am I going to say. Whatever needs to say gets said. And also, you point that you picked up beautifully is you know when not to say anything, right? And because we're starting with the more empty we can be to start with no agenda, then the easier it is to have this communication and connection. And the more we're open with each other, the more vulnerable we are with each other. As Brené Brown beautifully illustrates, connection gets formed and
Oh,
deepened.
she's brilliant author.
And she's got the research to back it up. But I've had experiences where I've watched people be very, very vulnerable, and everyone wants to almost like give her a hug when she comes back. It's that sort of thing, and it's almost like counterintuitive to what we think. If I tell people I'm weak or something, they're going to dismiss me, but they're not. They're actually going to welcome us in.
It's the complete opposite.
Yeah.
Because it allows them, because they're feeling exactly the same, that if you give a little bit of weakness, you don't have to give all your info.
Yeah.
But it allows them to feel comfortable and to trust that you're human as much as they are.
Yeah, exactly. And we need a lot more of that in this world. We need more sort of kindness, more humanness, more willing to say, you know what, I didn't get it right. And I had that conversation with my son after I went through one of my divorces, and and I just said, I'm sorry. I don't think I was a really good dad, and I'm sorry. And he was really gracious about it. And we've got a great relationship now. We've turned it around. But I had to be vulnerable and say, you know what? I didn't get it right. And, I've heard stories of, a child saying to their mum, I think the child was about 7 or 8, Mum, you're not listening. And, really calling them out. And she stopped. And first thought was, you cheeky thing. And then she thought, stop. No, I wasn't listening. And so she role modeled what you do. And she said, you're absolutely right. I'm sorry. I wasn't listening. I've got a lot on my mind, but it's not an excuse. I should have listened. So I'm sorry. I'm here. I'm fully present. Tell me again. And therefore we learn from that. So yeah, great points. Thank you, Annie. Anyone else? Christine.
Christine's got her hand up, and we're coming up to the hour, and so we want to do our breakout rooms, don't we?
Yeah.
So very quickly, I just wanted to say, I said about my younger sister not listening to me, and I actually got to the point of actually felt that it was almost fearful for her, because if she listened to me too much, then she'd get to know me better, because we're not particularly close.
Right.
And then I always said, my sister doesn't want me to jump onto her side of the wall, because she that wall's up by the way she is. And I think that's one of the reasons that doesn't happen, is because they're almost, they're protective, but also they don't know perhaps in some ways how to handle some of the things that they've learned about me.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Life is tough. And and I've got a friend of mine who's been listening to their daughter, who's she must be in her 40s now, and she said over these weeks and months of doing it, she's gradually starting to ask about me. She's always saying, thank you for listening, Mum, but actually the daughter's now starting to ask about her. And it takes time because we've got to undo a lot of these barriers or things we've learned in the past. So we're going to go into breakout rooms. We're going to do just 10 minutes, 5 minutes each. And the idea is that we're going to practice some of the things that we've touched on. And the speaker briefly summarizes an event, a holiday, a wedding, a birth, or something like that. Anything that they feel comfortable with. The listener listens and repeats back pretty much what the speaker has said. And it, can paraphrase. You don't have to do the exact words. And you could also offer what feelings did you pick up while they were speaking, and then so those questions could be factual, location, numbers, etc., or they can also be about the feelings experienced. And when you've asked the questions, then listen and invite them. Try out the and what more, and get them to speak a little bit more. So you'll have about 5 minutes each, and we'll talk a little bit about appreciation afterwards. So 5 minutes each. Gina will let you know, and go for that. I'll speak.
Welcome back, everybody. Colin, they're all back.
Cool. So I've got a handful of things that we can talk about at different times. Anyone got any particular questions, things that are troubling them, want some answers on before I just run through some things that I wanted to talk through? Okay, I'll carry on. Okay, so one of the key things I've learned on this journey for listening is, how am I arriving? And that's really important because, when I use this analogy of me being still and present, if I'm all over the place, then even if this person is stationary, I can't connect to them. And I had I have to say, a bit embarrassing story, because I tell myself I'm the listener, and we went into a breakout room, and just before going into the breakout room, there was a woman in the group who I was getting annoyed with, because somebody was talking and sharing something really quite important, and she was just jabbering around in the chat. So I'm not present, I'm over here, I'm away from this, and she ends up in the bloody same group as me. And then she has the audacity, and listen to my language, to say, well, what's the question? And I kind of wanted to shout from over there, well, if you'd been listening, you'd have known. And then she went on this rant for literally the whole of the 15 minutes. Another story, but it was a lesson to me to always come back to the center, like in squash, come back to the center, come back to the center. Stop judging, stop assuming about them. So I failed to arrive properly at that moment. So the more we can listen to ourselves, notice where we are, even check out with each other. And so there's this lovely image of 4 people in a team, and they all they're okay. But what's actually going inside for each of them is very different. One of them is very sad because they've lost a family member. Another one's absolutely shattered. They've been up all night with a baby that's not very well, etc., etc. And if we just checked in, as I do with people when I meet them, so how are you arriving today? Or even that question, how are you today, is a very different question to how are you? And so how am I today is very different. So arrival is really important, but it's our stuff. Own it first of all, then we can arrive that way. And use that little meditation I talked about earlier. So being still and settled and present versus the distracted part of it. Be interested in them. I remember going to I'd been at a workshop all day, and I sat down with someone, and he was interested in fishing. I have no interest at all about fishing, I have to confess. But I was interested in him and his fishing. And I learned a lot about fishing, I'll be honest. He didn't ask me one thing. And I often smile because I wonder when they go home and they the partner says, well, how was your evening? And they say, oh, it was lovely. I met this really interesting man. So tell me about him. Who was it? I think his name was Colin. Oh, Colin, right. And so why was he? I've no idea. But he was interesting because I was interested in them. So be interested before being interesting makes a big difference. A phrase I learned quite recently in terms of how do we build on conversations? Pick up what they put down. So listen to what they've said. How can I ask a question about that? How can I encourage them to say a little more, go a little deeper? When they share some of their experiences, I do it with Molly, my wife. Sometimes I'll stop her and say, right, first thing I need to know is, how are you? And she tells me I'm fine or I'm struggling. Then I know where we're at. So ask them how they're feeling. And when you go to feelings, we go to another level. We can start to be more supportive of them. Timing, when to listen. Judy, I know knows this story, but I used to live in Reading, and I'm now living in southeast London, near Greenwich, and so the journey here is 42 miles, but it can take anything between an hour and a half and 2.5 hours. And this one particular time, I arrived, and it was the 2.5 hour one, and I wasn't happy. And of course, Molly's been waiting for me all evening. She's dressed up nicely, happy, perfume and everything, and very welcoming. And I'm like, I'm a real sourpuss. And she said, why don't you just go down the coffee shop and wait until you've arrived? And I thought about it, and I thought, we've got to do something different. So now, I mean, we're now together here. But so what we then did is whenever I would arrive, we'd have a hug, go upstairs, have a cup of tea, and then for 5 or 10 minutes, I would listen to Molly telling me about her day. And the act of really listening to her settled me down. And then she would listen to me. And by now, I wasn't needing to talk about the traffic or anything. I was going to tell her it was a different conversation. And then we do something else, which is appreciation. And I was going to mention this, that when you go back, you can put in the chat a message to the person that you were with in the breakout room. And we often talk about feedback. And feedback is always about performance. It's about what you do. We rarely offer appreciation. Appreciation is always good, but actually it's about who you are. And so appreciation needs to be specific, it needs to be succinct, and it needs to be sincere. And it's about who they are. And so an example could be that you use by name. So for Steve, one thing I appreciate about you today is your courage. You've put your hand up 2 or 3 times in a quite a large group to just share some of your thoughts. I really appreciate that. And all you need to do is you sit with it. Yeah, thank you, Steve. And thank you. That's it. So it's about what you do. So it could be tenderness, it could be innocence, it could be openness. And so when we give that, people, and it's always going to be positive, by the way. So pop in the chat just a word of appreciation for the person you with. Put their name and just say, Steve or Mercedes or Diane, whoever you're with, a word of appreciation for the time you had together. And so I'm going to do mine as well.
boosts your immune system, doesn't it, to feel something
Sorry,
positive.
Gina.
It boosts your immune system to have something positive come in that makes you glow. When somebody says something nice to you, it's helpful at every level.
Yeah. I actually got a handwritten letter sent to me by email thanking me. How lovely is that? Because you didn't know my my home address, so nothing she could say. So just give you a few more moments. How are we doing for time? Good.
That takes us 7 more minutes before we'll move to closing, and then we need you need to share with us how people might find out about more events you've got and things like that.
Okay. Just some thoughts. I've talked about we think in waves of thinking and pauses. When people are speaking, give them 3 seconds. I call it a 3-second rule. And see if they respond, see if they continue speaking. They often will. And sometimes if you know they're thinking, give them 8 seconds. And I learned one today, which is a 90-second rule. So in the midst of conflict, just stop for 90 seconds. Gives you a chance to breathe, gives you a chance to reconnect with yourself. And things seem a lot less arduous, if you like, or difficult. And Gina knows the Brahma Kumaris very well. On the hour, every hour, they have a minute silence. And everyone stops in all their buildings. And they do that at the beginning of meetings, end of meetings, and anyone can do a timeout for 60 seconds. We speak at between 120 and 200 words a minute, and yet we can think of between 400 and 550 words a minute. So there's a lot of space. And one of the ways to use that extra bandwidth is to notice things. And somebody said earlier about the body language. Notice how they're feeling. What are you picking up about them? Because we've got the mirror neuron, so we're picking up what they're feeling, even over a screen. So that's useful to know. Interestingly, the one we use most of all is listening. That's the one thing we do most of all. It's the one that we are not trained in pretty much at all. The one we do least, which is we do a lot of speaking, and we're trained in that. So you talk about communications, you'll find lots and lots of books on speaking. All of that row is all about listening. That's because I'm interested in it. If you go to a shop, you'll struggle to find listening. So when you're setting up to listen, intend to listen, face the other. These are things you know. Look at them. Soft gaze. It's not a staring contest. No distractions. CEO in one company, she makes the point that whenever she meets anyone in the corridor, in a coffee area, she makes the point just quietly putting a phone away in a bag. And what she's noticed, without saying anything, more and more people are doing the same. Ask them what they need. A hug, help, or to be heard. Remember, this is their time. No interrupting, no judging. Use encouraging expressions, facial expressions, nodding, appreciation. I did this with a waitress during COVID because the way she welcomed us and looked after us, we felt safe. So I appreciated that in her. You'd think I'd given her $100 tip or £100 of tip for it. So there's lots going on. Any further thoughts, questions? And I've just got a quick handful of things to take away. Anything? Nope. Okay.
Oh, sorry, just a quickie. It's Christine again.
Okay.
I just want to say, like you say, appreciation. It means so much to people these days, particularly the shop people in the shop, that you connect with them, because everything is so disconnected now. And, you know, we don't necessarily have the till or whatever, but I think that's really an important thing. And that's something that I really do. It's part of me anyway, but it's a characteristic that I like, that I have, that you talk with people, or you actually, like a little boy, they were driving up the road very slowly past us the other day, and the little boy waved back and said hello, and you could just beam on his face. It was just delight. So yes, appreciation and recognition. So yeah.
Yeah, make a difference, one person at a time.
Yeah.
Just a quick one. Does everyone know how to save the chat so they can see it afterwards? So if you go on to chat, just pick it up on your screen. On the top right of the meeting where it shows chat, there's 3 little dots. So if you press that, it says save chat. And then you can save it. So when this closes, it will appear as a little thing on your screen so you can see it. And then you just click on it and it'll open up in a text box, because there's lots of really lovely stuff here. Got it. Where are we? Yep. So just some key things to take away. How am I arriving? What am I bringing with me? The 3 seconds, 8 seconds, 90 seconds. Be interested in them. Notice everything about them, around them, sense of them. Listen to self. What is coming up for me? You hear from, you listen to. And remember, listen before being listened to. Be understanding before being understood. Be interested before being interesting. Give attention before seeking attention. And create space for another before taking space. And I'll leave you with my final message in this, is we're all dying to be heard, literally and figuratively. So listen first, listen always. So overall, thank you again, Judy, for the opportunity, Gina for being the wingman or wing lady. Without you, I'm without it. And thank you all for your attention, your listening, and your contributions. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you. Going to do our applause. Colin, that was lovely, and much to think about. And it is such a basic skill that we're just not taught, or we even good listeners, we can forget, as you say, you can forget. But great tips there for coming back to self, remind, slow down, and then re-engage again. And it's just keep building that muscle. We're not used to doing it. You've got some things coming up. Do you do some online events or something? Have you got a link for something that might be people want to delve in a bit further?
So I've got two events coming up, which are public events. They're people who I know that I'm inviting. One's on the 19th of March, and if you connect with me, I think we can put into the chat my details. I will send you the link. So the first one's on, say, the 19th at 4 o'clock UK time, and it's really about time to think. So there's an opportunity to think for yourself whilst being having the attention of someone else with you. So the quality of their attention improves the quality of your thinking, and there's a whole other piece to that. But they're just really what I'm calling experiences of listening and being heard. And then the second event, which is on the 24th of March, is again at 4 o'clock, and it's a listening circle. And so this is where we literally sit in circle, we take a question, and one by one, each of us gets the opportunity to share their thoughts on it. So it's about dialogue, it's about a listening circle. And I'm always fascinated when I see and take part in listening circles. So we can happily have that. But yeah, thank you, Gina.
That sounds very precious. And I'm going to move now to stop the recording.